I think everybody should reinvent themselves at least a couple times throughout life. And I reinvented myself.
Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast, Your Best Day Yet. At Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I am Caleb Kolb, Chief Adventure Officer here at Center for Victory, and I'm stoked for today's podcast with Lindsey and Christian, owners of the Brownie House. And I am just pumped to talk to you guys and have you guys as guests because number one, I love brownies, but number two, we're family. So
Yes.
this is a double whammy for me to get to interview you guys, and I know your story, but I think it's so cool. The things that you guys have done, and now just the entrepreneur world, and running both of your own businesses too, Lindsey, with your coaching. And so I'm excited to talk to you about that and dig into it. And let's get started. So, Brownie House was created by Karen Higgins in 2005. It started with a family recipe in her home kitchen, and it quickly transformed into a busy e-commerce business with a popular bakery and storefront in Morgantown, West Virginia. The gourmet brownie bakery was closed several years later. However, nearly 15 years later, Karen and her oldest son, Christian, rebranded and reopened Brownie House. Karen and Christian left their professional careers behind to pursue their passion for baking the best brownies ever and growing the family business into a national brownie company. In just 2 years, Brownie House has been recognized by Food Network's magazine, and it has shipped gourmet brownies to every state in the U.S. and Asia. What makes Brownie House the best brownies ever? Well, they're baked with imported premium cocoa powder and dark chocolate, homemade or otherwise high quality ingredients, and never with artificial preservatives. The best brownies ever. And I can attest that these are the best brownies ever because I was excited to connect you guys and Eric and Tammy and the family here. And at your wedding, I think I had about 11 brownies. So I took photos of them. Like, you got to meet this couple. So yeah. So let's start with Lindsey, because you have a crazy story as well. I think is really cool. And with the acting and Wicked on Broadway, and just like, give us your background a little bit, because I think it's really cool.
Yeah, so I went to school for musical theater. So I have a BFA in musical theater. So that's in New York City. And while I was in college, I did Bring It On the musical, like the cheerleading movie, which was cool because I had been a cheerleader in high school. So then when there were the musical for cheerleaders, I was like, I am this. This is who I am. So that was really cool. And then I booked Wicked right when I graduated college. And yeah, I lived in New York City for 10 years doing Broadway shows, off Broadway. I did some tours, and I also taught yoga, and I started meditating. And I felt like yoga and meditation were so important and helpful to me while also being in the entertainment industry. And so I was there for a long time, 10 years. And then when COVID hit, I moved back to Pittsburgh, which is where I met Christian on Hinge. So shout out to
Shout out
Hinge.
to Hinge.
Shout out
Thanks.
to Hinge. Give Hinge the
Uh-huh.
plug.
Yeah.
Uh,
And Christian was in law school, and I was just in Pittsburgh. And I was actually kind of relieved to be out of New York for a while. The pause was actually, I was kind of grateful to slow down, even though the world was sort of ending, but it was kind of like a pause where I got to reassess. And I started teaching at a charter school at Westinghouse Arts Academy in Wilmerding in Pittsburgh. And Christian finished up law school, and then we moved to Philly together, and I opened my coaching business when we moved to Philly. So he got a job as a lawyer, and I was like, great. When he goes to his law job, I like treated my coaching business just like 9 to 5. And I started coaching a lot of actors, creative entrepreneurs. I coach business owners now too. But I've been doing that for 3 years. So it was kind of like the yoga, meditation, all the coaching I had done personally sort of transitioned well into opening my own practice where I work with a lot of artists.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of cliff
That's
notes.
really cool. So do you think like the yoga maybe was keeping you grounded, keeping you that was like the glue that from all these crazy trying things that you guys were doing is like maybe your personal therapy. That's I find that, obviously you guys know this, I find that with hiking and backpacking, like regardless of what role I'm in or job I'm doing, I need to turn my phone off and go for a walk in the woods, and I feel a lot better. And I know the value of yoga and doing that too. We actually offer free yoga at our office once a month, and it's a really cool opportunity for people. So um,
Yeah.
that's
Also
awesome.
on Christian's Hinge profile. So you know how I don't know, you can put prompts on your Hinge profile, and one of his
She always
prompts.
brings this up.
Yeah,
I
because
love it. I don't know if I heard this. This wasn't at the
yeah.
wedding, so yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, one of his like three prompts to like, explain his personality was like going on a run into hot yoga. Have you tried it? And I was like, okay, so this guy likes yoga. So I'm not gonna have to like drag
Yeah.
this guy to a yoga class, or he has some sense of like inner work and meditation,
Yes.
like an inner life. That's important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe tell us, Christian, a little bit about yourself. I know we bonded over wrestling and the grind of wrestling, but you've done much more than wrestling, and so I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about leadership, like really it started with wrestling. And I know you can relate to that because, and we've talked about it, it's such a grind and it's such like, even though it's an individual sport, it's a team sport and people don't realize
Mhm.
that. And the team can come together and do great things, but when it's a bunch of individuals, it's just on the individual level. So yeah, like leadership, grew up wrestling and that was huge. I went to WVU for undergrad, West Virginia. While I was in undergrad, I enlisted in the Army. So in between semesters over the summer, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. Went to basic training, job training as a scout. Came back and I was in the West Virginia National Guard and Army ROTC at WVU. So I did that for 3 years while I was in undergrad. I graduated from WVU and I commissioned into the active duty Army. I served in the active duty Army for 4 years before I got out. And it was like such an amazing experience. I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything. I served as a tank platoon leader where I commanded and controlled 4 tanks, which is the sickest job ever.
Yeah.
And then I was the executive officer, so I was second in command of an infantry company after that, which was also amazing. So yeah, basically lived in the desert for a few years, went overseas, came back, and I was kind of like looking for something else to do that was not the army. So then I got out, I went to law school at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. Another great experience. That was an individual thing, which was different.
Yeah.
Like growing up, I've always been in team sports. The Army is like super team focused. School is not really. It's just you. Kind of refreshing to have those 3 years where I could just kind of do my own thing, super busy, but just kind of focusing on a little bit of self-development. So I graduated from Duquesne, and during that time, Lindsey and I met each other. Finished up law school, took the bar exam, and then Lindsey and I moved to Philadelphia because I had a job. So it kind of worked out. We thought it was going to work out because Lindsey was trying to she was thinking about going back into acting, which basically you need to be in New York City to take that serious at the level that she wanted to do. So it was kind of a trade-off. I was like, well, I have this opportunity to work in Philly, and it's just an hour and a half train ride to New York City for you. So we just packed up, moved to Philly. I had never been there. I don't think you had ever been to Philly either. We got an apartment and we just moved all our stuff there. I'm like, okay, let's see what Philadelphia is like.
Yeah.
Um, so Lindsay ended up not really even going to New York City that
It
much.
was like the industry was still, that was 2021. So the industry
Hmm.
was just still kind of coming back. And I was like, just the way shows were coming back and what was happening in the city. And I was just kind of like, I don't really like, I was doing so much coaching and I was like, I really like this. So that's just what I was focused on and what was interesting to me. Um,
Lindsay locked herself in. It was a nice apartment. We had 2 bedrooms, so we turned one into an office, and it was pretty small. I mean, maybe like 10 feet by 10 feet. and she locked herself in that closet, in that
Didn't
room
actually love
for like 8 months.
Yeah.
I was
Oh,
impressed, but it was like, man, she were really taking it seriously, like
yeah,
trying to
like
figure out how to be a coach and what works, and like you went full send on that.
it
I
was
feel
kind of
like,
helpful, like to that we didn't have any family friend. We just like it was like he
right.
goes to work and I just go to work. So
Yeah,
it
it
was like almost a
was isolating.
yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah.
it was kind of a prime environment.
I feel like you guys could write the book on high performers, like high performance couples. And I
We also
remember,
do jujitsu together now.
Yeah, we do.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, we gotta talk about
Yeah,
jujitsu.
Lindsey
Yeah.
Um,
just did her 1 year.
Yeah.
what
Oh,
belt are you, Lindsey?
I'm still a white
She's a
belt,
white belt.
but there's glimmers of progress.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah, like it's not terrible anymore. It used to be terrible, and now it's kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, jujitsu is such a cool sport. I think it's also it's a great way for I think nowadays people don't get humbled as much as they should necessarily. And I was just in Florida with Sarah for the Malone Family Foundation, the Warrior Wellness Academy. And so it's a hockey, it's for veterans and first responders, and it's geared around hockey and mental health. But each year they also have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu component to it. And so they brought in there were like four guys that were all like shredded cauliflower ear, like former special operators. And so I don't know much about jujitsu, but I used to be a wrestler, and they knew that I wrestled Division 1 at Nebraska. And so they were like, oh, just like, like, just roll with us, roll with it. And I'm like, all right. So, they basically did like shark bait, like where one person just stays in the whole time.
Yeah.
And they did that for me. So I was in until I got tapped out. And I did that like so like four people in a row choked me out. And that was a great experience it was a very humbling experience for me that I hadn't been choked out in a while. And so that was great.
Super
So
humbling.
and that's really cool that you guys get to do that together, and it's exciting. And Christian, I know too, like I heard at your wedding you are also like the leader of your fraternity in college, right? So you are like planning events and doing things for that, but then basically,
Yeah.
you'd get it all set up and then you'd leave and go to bed because you had to wake up at 5 in the morning for a drill or something.
That was the worst semester of my life. It was sophomore year. I was in a fraternity and I lived in the house. And I was also the social chair. So
Yeah.
my friend, my friend and I had to plan the social events, all the parties. And so we had a party set up. I would help like set up, we'd go get the beer, get everything ready, and then it would be like a Thursday night, and I had to get up in the morning to go to PT for Army ROTC. And so I'd have to get up sometimes super early, like 5. So
Yeah.
I was like, I can't be here all night. Like
Right.
tomorrow's gonna suck if I stay here and party or even try to sleep because it's gonna be way too loud. So I would just I would set up everything and then I'd go to my parents' house because they live in Morgantown and
Yeah.
and then I'd wake up and go to PT.
I think
Not
that's
every night. So, there were nights I stayed at the house, but
Yeah, no, I think that's so cool. Just from like, okay, you're in college, you're living at the house, but being able to have your priorities in line to kind of know what your goals are and achieve those. And we were all in college. I know how hard that can be. So yeah, that was something when I think your dad mentioned that at the wedding, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's cool. I had no idea about that. So
yeah. No, it
um
was good. And like, yeah, I was grateful for that experience. I think when I joined the army, I was doing some soul searching. Yeah, I had just turned 18. And so I was kind of like, you turn 18, you start wondering like, all right, I can make a decision for myself, which is kind of the first time you reach that point in your life. And yeah, so it was something that I just decided to do, but I think it kind of kept me on track. And I think a lot of people need that and they don't have it, but I was grateful to have that because like yeah, I was in a fraternity, like social life is huge in college, but I had to wake up early and like I had to leave
right.
on weekends and so that was something that was able to like, it was a forcing function to keep me going, keep me on the right track. And that was cool.
Yeah, so I think just having those leadership roles and really all of those commitments, like how do you think that translated, kind of setting you guys up for success with Brownie House? Because I know the success of Brownie House and the growth that you guys have experienced over the past like several years is incredible. Do you think a lot of that is kind of, you know, the training and everything that you both went through and kind of the leadership roles that you had previously to be able to bring that into Brownie House?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's funny. I think, I have all this leadership experience in the Army, and it's so different from running a small business. And I didn't expect that going in. I had no small business experience. I had a lot of experience leading teams, which is always transferable. That's
Mm-hmm.
great, like, no matter what setting you're in. But the difference is like for me in a small business, you don't have the resources, you don't have the money, you don't have the manpower.
Yeah, heard
In
that.
the army, especially, it's like, all right, we got to go bring this tank out into the desert, pull the engine out, replace it, and we're 40 miles from home station. And we're like, all right, we'll do it. And then sometimes somehow it gets done. But for a small business, you can't be like, we're gonna do this crazy thing that requires all these people and money because you don't have those resources available. So, that was a huge difference for me and took a lot of adjusting. Personnel management is communication. Effective
Hmm.
leadership is communicating with people, right? So of course, like any experience doing that is gonna benefit. And I think it has helped me a lot, but in the small business setting where I have all part-time employees, like it is still different from my past experiences. So it has been a major learning experience for me as I've gone, just trying to adapt and trying to learn like what's the right thing to do in this scenario. Because
Right.
like this scenario is different from other scenarios that I've experienced in life. And every day, man, it's like something new happens, and I do a lot of reflecting, just trying to think like, am I leading my small team as effectively as I can in this situation? Am I communicating effectively? How are people receiving the way I'm communicating with them? It's like all that different stuff is, I don't know if you can, some people are better at it than others, but I don't know if you can ever be a professional at it. Like there's so much to learn. So yeah, I mean that's it for me. And I know your experiences are different, but she communicates so well with people. It's impressive. Like I get inspired watching Lindsey communicate with people because it's very different with how I communicate. And
Right.
so I really do appreciate that. And I'll watch Lindsey and other people, and I'm like, man, that was effective. I need to be more like that.
Hmm. Well, he just took a different test. We were talking about the personality test.
Hmm. Yeah, the PI and
Hmm.
What did you just took one? There was
Yeah, it was a leadership assessment, and they're like the end result is 4 quadrants. And and then like it's like 18 questions you answer, and then you get put into one of the 4 quadrants, and that's your leadership style. So I was a driver. There were several others. One was like an analyst,
expressive.
expressive and amiable.
So
And yeah.
so I feel like I'm more on the expressive, amiable side, and you're more driver analytical, which when dealing with people, it's kind of like you can say things in a and bring like lightness to it or
right.
humor. You can deliver like, and also with coaching, it's like people pay me to tell them the truth, like what no
Right.
one else can say to them.
Right.
So I have a lot of practice saying really uncomfortable things in a way
Delivering
planned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
delivering that news to them where they still not only like you but want to continue paying you to to make positive
yeah,
life changes.
So
Yeah.
this is it. That's an interesting point. And so, kind of side note, I'm doing right now. I'm in this Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program for Brownie House, and it's an amazing group. And I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it, but basically, it's like 25 business owners in West Virginia that were selected. They applied and got into this program. And we talk about like all things business, like how to run your business. But this week we're doing leadership, and that's why I took that test. And so this morning I had a meeting, and we were talking about our leadership styles, and they grouped everybody by their classification, their category. So I met with the drivers today, and we had this set of questions to ask and talk about related to our leadership style being drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we talked about was that although we are very good at communicating directly, it's much different than having a conversation that's challenging with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You can be really good at communicating directly and cutting straight to the point, but when you need to have a conversation with someone that's like, you got to tread lightly, it's, kind of difficult. The two don't necessarily transfer. And I thought that was so interesting because, you say someone's, oh, you're great at direct communication. Like that's not always the right approach.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsey's so good at it, but as a coach, like she has these tough conversations. A lot of people avoid those conversations, especially people like being direct because you can just be like, this is how it is, and then move on.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsey will dig into the issues in a way that doesn't offend people, that gets through to them, and it's so impressive.
Yeah, I find that stuff so interesting. This is because when you say like some of those people avoid those conversations, like that's me, right? And
Sure. Yeah,
that's
same.
one of those things that I am, I guess, socially aware enough to know about myself, right? And one of my mentors has said, conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. I don't know if you've ever heard that. And I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
because
Mhm.
sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'll deal with that tomorrow. And then I have to be like, no, I need to deal with that now. And this is so funny because I actually had the same conversation with Ben from Hilltop Packs. We were talking about, Sarah told me about this, was buffalo culture. Have you ever heard that term before, the buffalo culture? So
Oh.
the buffalo is one of the only grazing animals that when a storm is coming, they will run directly into the storm, where
Hmm.
other like grazing animals will run, they'll try to run away from the storm and end up being in the storm longer, right? They're running with the storm versus the buffalo that's running head into it. And so, they're actually in the storm less time. And so that's kind of been one of our core values that we've adopted at ATP is this buffalo culture. And so like, addressing these conflicts, don't not being afraid to address these head on and communicate, because at the end of the day, um, you know, everybody is better off and the relationships are better off. And, when you can get everybody on the same page, then avoid it. So I really appreciate you guys
Yeah.
sharing that, because, I could just see Liz. I've never done a coaching session with you, but I know that I could tell that you'd be phenomenal at that.
Yeah.
And that's got to be such a cool relationship for Brownie House, that there's like kind of both, you see both sides of the coin and can manage and lead effectively, and probably a reason that you guys are selling to every state in the US, in the country right now. So what caused you, how did you say, okay, I don't think I want to be a lawyer after going to school and passing the bar and getting a job and picking up and moving to Philadelphia, and Lindsey joining and working out there? Like, how did you say, okay, you know what, let's do a quick audible here and and go back to Pittsburgh and pursue this other dream?
You know what? It was due to Lindsey's coaching.
Oh,
I
let's
got
go.
coached.
Yes.
Okay. So I started, fresh out of law school, first job was in Philly. Um, Full time, 8 hours a day, pretty intense billable hour requirement, among some other things that I just didn't love. But I was showing up to the office 5 days a week, sitting at the desk, staring at the computer. And I was just like, after a couple months, that hit me hard because I started to feel like that was the rest of my life. I was like, okay, I've arrived and I'm going to be staring at this computer. And I don't think that that was totally accurate, but in that moment, it was almost like
Mhm.
an existential crisis. So I became like a shell of myself, just showing up to the office doing something that I didn't enjoy.
Mhm.
And of course I would bring it home, and Lindsay would
Yeah.
have to listen to me complain, and like she would just see how I was not happy doing what I was doing. And so it was probably 7 months of working full time. And I remember we were sitting in a bar in Fishtown, Philadelphia, where we lived. And we were just talking about it because Lindsay, we always talk about things that like are bothering us. Like Lindsay and I are full disclosure with everything, and it's great. So she started to coach me, and I think we had been talking about like things that I wanted to do versus what I'm doing, kind of like, okay, you enjoyed your time in the army, you enjoyed being around people, like building something, working as a team. And she knew about Brownie House because Brownie House was a business that my mom started in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
And she had it for almost 3 years, but it became like just too much for one person. And she had my youngest brother who was just born around that time. And so it was like, all right, she just decided to focus on the family, close the business. Over time, we would kind of joke around about the business, like, oh, we'll open Brownie House again. So Lindsay knew about that story. And honestly, I can't remember how it came up, but maybe Lindsay just suggested like, have you ever thought about opening Brownie House? And I remember when you said that for the first time and you were serious about it, I was like, no, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I was just like, not happening. Like it's not me. I'm not
He's
doing it.
kind of he's kind of stubborn
Yeah,
sometimes.
for
He's a
sure.
Taurus. I'm an
Oh
Aries.
yeah, for sure. I
He
get
kind of
that. I
takes
get
his
that.
time.
You gotta lead me to water and then I'll drink.
Yeah,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
he warms up to things, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, what was you okay, so what's your recollection up to that point?
Yeah, I mean it was like you were so just unhappy and I remember, yeah, I would just ask you and I call it unsolicited coaching because I didn't like get consent for it to like
Yeah.
coach.
You
I just
you weren't sending him an invoice for that time.
no. No, and I didn't ask
Yeah,
if he wanted to be it's like that's just breaking all the rules of coaching. It was like no. But I was just
Right.
like, well, what else do you want to do? I would just like kind of try to bring it into like where is the energy? Like where
Mhm.
and I feel like when you would talk about Brownie House, there was like a
mhm,
lift. It was like that could be cool and or like you not like that you were actually considering it, but you would just yeah, it would just come up sometimes and there would be like a lightness to it. And it was like
Yeah.
mhm,
so I was just noticing that. And yeah, we were just, what else? And then you were kind of applying for like remote
mhm.
law jobs. Like he
Yeah.
was just like, maybe it's the environment.
Mhm.
And then one day I feel like I was just like, well, what about Brownie House? And you were like, yeah, I'm gonna call my mom tomorrow.
Yeah, I thought about it for maybe a couple days. Like I said, I was super resistant to it at first, and then I just kept rolling it around, and I was inspired. I don't think I've ever even told you this, so this is good.
Hey,
I
let's
was
go.
inspired by Lindsay because Lindsay was supporting herself through a business that she built. Like Lindsay didn't have a 9 to 5 job like so many other people.
Mhm.
She transitioned out of her acting career by way of COVID and then figured it out. And she started coaching because she decided to start coaching. And then she was making money and she was living a life that she enjoyed. And I saw that, and I think for the first time it resonated with me that I didn't have to do take that linear path, which is go to school, get a job, go to work 9 to 5, come home.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be that way. It's just kind of what we're told growing up. And my dad's a lawyer, so that was my example, and that's great. Like there's 100% nothing wrong with that. But my mind hadn't really been open to that concept, and the army was kind of different from that because it wasn't like starting your own venture. It was still like I go to work. It was still very
Mhm.
much just a job. And so I saw you start your own business and you were, working for yourself and it was successful and you were building something, you were passionate about it. And I started to realize that that's also what I was interested in. and I wasn't getting that as being a first year associate at a law firm. So I think really that's why the idea of opening Brownie House resonated with me. It wasn't even necessarily Brownie House, although the opportunity was there because of Brownie House and that it already existed in our family. But it was just like, oh, I would love to do that, and Brownie House could help me do that. So
Yeah.
you put those pieces together, and then I was like, you know what? If we're gonna do it, we might as well do it right now.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity. Let's just go do it. And I think I had some confidence in myself that was
Yeah.
probably unwarranted. But hey, dude, I mean, you have to believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, who's going to, right? So it's
No,
like
yeah.
I was like, yeah, we're gonna get this business. We're gonna make millions of dollars. We're gonna work for ourselves on our own time. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
And then it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. But I will say, like, I think the thing that it allowed me to start my own coaching business is that I went to school for acting, which is also a service-based business. Like, that's what I teach a lot of
Hmm.
my artist clients, where it's like, if you're an actor, a singer, a producer, a writer, like anyone, if you have a coach, even if you're a coach, it's like that's a service that you are selling, that like you. So I never had a 9 to 5. I
Hmm.
never had like a traditional, like I never took that path. So even it's almost like easy. It's not even easier. It's just like more foreign for me to go work a 9 to 5 than
Mhm. Yeah.
to
Right.
do.
Your kind of traditional path is different than the traditional kind of,
Yeah.
But it's
graduate and
it's so interesting that I had never even considered that as an option for myself moving forward.
hmm
Never even considered it, and you can't, like, that concept has to resonate with you before you can take that next step into entrepreneurship. Unless
yeah.
you're like me and you've just always, it's always been a part of your life.
So
Mhm.
And
what
it
did
doesn't come naturally.
well, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it doesn't come naturally when all you've known for your whole life up to whatever point you're at is that, like, go to school, get a job, work, and then
Hmm.
do that for 30 to 40 years and retire. That's like the American dream, right? But not really, because you get there and you're like, this sucks.
It's somebody's dream, I guess, you know.
Yeah, and like there's nothing wrong with that, right? And people have amazing careers, and that's totally cool. But like you gotta like what you do, and if you don't, then you should make a change. And I think that was kind of like the whole idea. Like you should make a change if you're not enjoying what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Do it
I
in a way that's calculated.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's something that we all need to hear too. I when I graduated the university, I worked for the university for a couple years. I was an admissions counselor for the University of Nebraska, and then I had the opportunity to start working for a medical supply company. Ended up running that business, which is not too impressive. There was no other employees; it was just me. Um, and it was very, very stressful, right? Like it was incredibly stressful. I'm always like, the manpower, the resources, the finances, like, but the one thing I got out of that when I was like, I don't ever want to work, a 9 to 5 again. Like I want to be in control of my own kind of destiny. And so then being able to come home and do ATP and, now getting to do these adventures, these amp trips with Eric is like, that's like my passion is putting those together and seeing people like the development, the like kind of self-reflection, the personal professional development that comes from that. And the more opportunity for type 2 fun. That's like my, I love the type 2 fun thing. Uh, but I wanted to ask, so you decide to start, you guys have talked it over, you've spent some time, a few days thinking about this, and now you're going to call your mother and tell her,
Yeah.
hey, what do you think about starting Brownie House? So how'd that go? What did she say? What was her reaction? Was she stoked?
Yeah, she was stoked. It was quick. It was Saturday morning. I called her up. I said basically, "Hey, I'm not liking what's happening here in Philadelphia. I want to quit my job. What do you think about starting Brownie House?" And it was like almost immediate. She just said yes. She agreed to it. And dude, we hit the
Well,
ground running.
she said, no, she said, I've been waiting for you to
Oh yeah,
say
she
that.
said that.
Like she knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So we just started right then and there. And then I quit. Yeah, so like a week later, maybe I quit my job. Well, I put 3 weeks notice in, which was a weird conversation to have because I had to go tell the guy who hired me from law school, who gave me this great opportunity. I
Yeah.
was like, hey, um, I'm quitting my job to start a gourmet brownie bakery.
Yeah.
And
Who
I think
says that?
and I think he was like, okay,
He's like,
cool.
he's like,
Didn't
you're gonna do
expect that.
what?
Yeah.
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 Well, you also said a lot of other lawyers in the office were like, great, yeah, good idea, man. Get out while you can. Good, yeah, go. Like almost like, oh, you're the young guy that like is gonna
Yeah.
go
Mhm.
do the
Follow his
thing.
dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would
Well,
you oh, go ahead, sorry.
a lot of people who had, careers as attorneys for 20-ish years, they were basically like, yeah, that's, I would tell them what I was doing, and they're like, that's such a great idea. I wish that I had done that too, or at least one person said like, yeah, I had an idea like that, and I kind of wish I did it. But you get so deep into your career, and you get established, and you start making good money, and I think that idea or the possibility just seems like less of a possibility as the years go and the time is spent doing what you've been doing professionally. People just are like, nah, it's too risky. If you're 40 years old, 45, you're like, why would
Hmm.
I quit what I have now? I mean, I'm 10 years from retirement. It's just like, so a lot of people were kind of giving me that impression,
Right.
which kind of fueled me too, because I was like, yeah, people
Yeah.
are
It
on.
gives you motivation
Yeah.
to succeed. So when did you guys move home back to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so right after that conversation, my mom and I, we hit the ground running, started planning, had spreadsheets, we were buying stuff, figured out how much money we wanted to spend, opened a credit card, bank accounts. That was January 2022, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lindsey and I moved back to Morgantown in first week of April. So it was
Into
pretty
his
quick.
sister's basement.
To my sister's basement for 6 months.
Hey, I lived in my parents' basement when I came back to PA to do
Yeah,
Yeah.
ATP. Yep.
free
Yep.
rent. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I was living in my parents' basement when I met Sarah, so that's why we'd always go out to eat or go to her folks, no, I'm not taking somebody out. Yeah, this is my mom and dad. So
Yeah.
yeah.
oh, that's
Um,
so cool.
yeah, we moved into my sister's basement. We still had our lease in Philly until July, I think. It's like
Mhm.
until
Until someone
early,
else, yeah, like we
well,
just left. Yeah.
they wouldn't let us out of our lease, but we were just like, all right, we'll pay it because we wanted to get back. Because before we even got into Morgantown, my mom and I had found a commercial space and we had already leased it and they were building it out.
That's
So
awesome.
we
It's
had
right.
to get
I know
we
exactly where that's at, actually. Yeah.
we had to get the ball rolling because we were incurring expenses.
Right.
So there was no time to waste. And it was very hasty. Although at the time I didn't realize that. We had no experience running businesses really. My mom had the business much smaller, but it was like 15 years ago. It was so long ago. She's like, honestly, I don't remember. It was hard for her to recall like a lot of the specifics about how that business went. So we just tried to make reasonable decisions, but we're like, all right, we have to leave Philly soon. So in April, we moved back. We got lucky. Our landlord in Philly found new tenants who wanted to move in early, so we were able to break our lease like a month or two early, so we
Mhm.
didn't have to pay for that portion of the rent. Um,
That's nice. That,
that's nice. Yeah. So we got to Morgantown in April, and then we opened the doors to Brownie House to the retail storefront in May. So
wow.
a month later. Yeah. And it was hardly built out. I mean, we really piecemealed it together. We had limited startup capital. So what we did was just bought the essentials first,
Hmm.
which was all the baking equipment. I know one of the shortfalls of my mom's first go around was that she needed to expand because she had a lot of demand for the product, but you have to have the commercial equipment to bake with that level of capacity. So we got all the equipment we needed, pretty much two of everything: commercial ovens, commercial mixers, a three-door refrigerator,
Mhm.
which is expensive. So all the money that we had, which we funded out of pocket, went to that equipment. We got it into the storefront. Storefront was built out pretty quickly. My mom started testing recipes on the new equipment because that's another thing. It's like you have this equipment, now you have to make sure your recipe works on
Right.
this specific equipment. For baking, it's different. So it was the first week of May. We just had the baking equipment. We had like a retail
It was like an
space.
IKEA table with like a cash box on it, like and a and a handheld toast, which is a point of
No,
sale.
we didn't
Or
even
Yeah.
have a sales system yet.
well, you had no, you
I
had
had my laptop that had
oh
QuickBooks.
Yeah,
yeah,
dude.
You could make a QR code that
yes.
scans, it's like a payment link.
Uh-huh.
And
Directly to your QuickBooks. That's awesome.
we had no timeline for when well, we did. We were shooting for June 1st to open the retail. But like I was saying, in May, that first week, my mom started testing the recipes. And where the the commercial space is located is in a shopping center in Morgantown.
Mhm.
There's other stores, there's people shopping. My mom starts baking, and you can smell the brownies through the whole building.
That might be the best marketing ever.
Oh, it's great.
It is.
So we had people who were opening the door to our space, and they were just walking in, and they'd be like, "Are you guys open?" And we kept turning people down because we weren't open. We didn't have a point of sale system. And then it was a Saturday, like maybe a few days after that started happening. And I remember like four people came in that day. Lindsey was there. It was my mom, Lindsey, and I. Like four people came in separately and like, "You guys open?" And we're like, "No." Finally, a lady came in, or right before she came in, I think I said, "I'm not turning down the next customer who walks in here."
You were
Like,
like, let's just give him
because
some. Can you we give him one?
we
Like,
had the brownies. We
yeah.
just
Right.
like had no other way of like, we had no retail like tables or anything like that. But I had QuickBooks and I knew I could make a payment link. So I was like, the next person who comes in here, we're selling them brownies. And so
Yes.
the lady, sure enough, came in. She's like, "You guys open?" We're like, "Yeah, come on in."
Yeah, so
We sold her
she
brownies.
bought
And
a brownie, and I remember she like walked out, and Christian was like, "Yeah," because it was like the
yes.
sale. It's like, yeah, there's one, there's two,
First sale.
there's two,
Yes.
there's like that moment of like
Mhm.
we made like that first
The
dollar that
first dollar, man. I know
yeah.
I have on you guys know my friend Tim Wood, right? I think he's former military. I don't know if you haven't
I'm
met
not
him,
sure.
but I took him and his now wife, fiance at the time, to climb Mount Whitney in California. And afterwards, they got this nice frame and they put our permit in it with photos. And then he put four quarters in it and taped like with scotch tape. It's like the nicest glass frame, like with wood back, and then taped like four quarters in there and was like,
Yeah.
here's your first dollar, you know? And I remember being like I have it in my office hanging up because it does. It's like, you're like, all right, this is real. It's real now. Like we're doing this. And so from then on was Brownie House open for business?
Yeah. We had been posting on social media before that, trying to hype up Morgantown mostly, building awareness for the brand. We hadn't posted a date that we were set to open yet. So on that day, we were finally like, okay, we're open. So we posted on Instagram and Facebook, "We're open. Here's our address," basically. And people started coming in, and we were kind of surprised because the space that we moved into, we weren't sure whether it was actually going to work as a retail space. Our original concept was that it was just going to be a bakery and we were going to go e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
We were always going to open that space to the public. We just weren't sure how well it was going to do because it's kind of like it's tucked away in the Seneca Center, which is the shopping center. It's like on the lower level. It's kind of hard to find. So we're like, I don't know, we'll give it a shot. But people kept coming, and so we stayed busy because now we're like, okay, we have to keep brownies ready for people because they're going to start to come in. And we started making money, not a lot, but like you said, that first dollar is like this is serious.
Yeah.
Now game on. And so we kind of set our hours, like, all right, 6 days a week. And then pretty much I feel like every day after that we had some customers. And then it started to continue. And we're like, whoa, like, okay, we think people like this product, which was also something where like we hope they like the brownies, right? Like that would suck to have people not like the product that our whole business is based on. Um, it got kind of crazy though by doing that because we didn't take much time to plan what the business was really going to look like or what the operation was going to look like. And at the time, Lindsey was not really involved with the business. I mean, she was more of like my moral support person when I would come home, but she would help like
Yeah.
occasionally. So it was just my mom and I in the bakery. And so I was like, our mom, we're open for business. Let's get these brownies pumping. And we had a lot of different varieties. We started with like 8 different. So there was a lot of pressure to have all of those available for
All of
people
those
to come
stocked.
in.
Yeah.
And when you first start business, you really want to make an impression on people because we're like, we have one shot with these people. We have no furniture in our retail space. So like they already are walking in thinking this is kind of odd. We want to make sure our product delivers at least. So she put a lot of pressure on herself to keep the production going. And I would be in there washing all the dishes and helping customers and running back and forth and cutting the brownies and wrapping them. And we kept that going for, I think, about 2 months. And we were tired, but the business was coming in. So we're like, okay, this is cool. We finally were like, we need to hire an employee because this is becoming too much and we do need some time off and like just need help.
Hmm.
So we hired one employee, part-time WVU student, and then that was probably in that summer, like mid-summer. And by that first holiday season, I think we had like 11 or 12 employees on the payroll.
Yeah,
So,
that's so crazy. I remember when
still,
Sarah and I came down, you guys were
yeah,
moving and shaking, man. You
yeah,
guys, it was
uh,
it was a efficient operation, man.
yeah. And we did finally get some tables in the retail area. We got a display case that we bought on Facebook Marketplace. It was an old one, kind of like refurbed. Put that up there. We had a little system going. It became so busy, man, because now we were running this business that, we were firing from the hip, learning as we were doing it, trying to figure out what the operation actually looked like what worked, what didn't work. Are we even making money on this product? Because we're so busy, it's like all of that analysis goes out the window. You're just trying to survive.
Mhm.
Right.
And we have all these employees on the payroll.
Right. All
So
the
it's like,
market research you spend all the time to develop, you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, just stay alive.
and
Yeah.
like Caleb, like we were talking about earlier with communication and leadership, not only are we just learning how to run this business, but we've got like 10 or 11, 18, 19, 20-year-old employees that are looking at us like, all right, I'm here for work. What do I do? And
Right.
we've got scheduling and we've got to make sure that they're trained and that like there's all these other things that come with managing personnel.
Hmm.
And I mean, we can make good decisions and we know how to interact with people. And it was just a whole nother element. And then it got
He
crazy.
says it's so much harder to lead teenage part-time
Oh,
employees than like
It is.
army. Like the army was easier
oh, I
because
bet.
It was easier, man, because in the army, everybody's on board.
Right.
Everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid. So, and you've got so many leaders. I mean, their job titles are leaders. Like you got a team leader, squad leader, platoon sergeant, like all these different leadership roles. And they all take it seriously, most people. But when
Hmm.
it's just part-time employees, the buy-in is not nearly that same level. So getting your part-time employees to show up in the right uniform, greet the customers appropriately, stay on task, take initiative, it's a lot of work. And also for your part-time employees, you're just praying they don't quit because
Yeah.
you have employees,
Right. And that's a whole
you
nother.
know?
Now I got to find somebody else that
Yeah.
meets these qualifications that I have to then train and,
Yeah.
and is going to have the values that the Brownie House values that you're
Yeah.
trying to push out.
Sure.
Golly.
But we got lucky because my brother is in WVU, and so we hired within his friend group, which was a fantastic business decision
Yeah.
because we were able to vet all these employees because we already knew them.
Yeah,
We did hire a couple, two or three randoms, and most of it turned out to be really good. And some of them are still with us today. But it was, yeah, the vetting process was kind of taken care of for us because we knew
that's
who these
nice.
were. And so we got very lucky because our team members were awesome and had a lot of buy-in just because they liked the business. We tried to treat them as good as we could, and we would tell them like, "Hey, we're a startup. We can only pay you." I think at that point we were starting them at $10 an hour, which is still more than minimum wage. But I felt like I wanted to pay them more because they were helping us so much.
Right.
But tell them like, guys, we wish that we could pay you more than $10 an hour, but because we're a brand new startup, we can't do that. But we appreciate you guys. We just want you to know that. And I think we would tell them that a lot, and that paid dividends for us. And there
Hmm.
seemed like they had a lot of buy-in to the business, even though they weren't making a ton of money, but they would show up and they do a great job. And that was like so critical to our ability to continue growing the business at that point. It was so busy rolling into that first holiday season, which I think we were what, like half a year into business by the time November, December came around. And that was a whole other thing for us because we started doing corporate gifts for the holidays for companies. And I don't even remember really advertising corporate gifts at all that first holiday season. And we had like 10 to 12 companies send pretty large gifts.
To all their
Either
employees and
their
yeah.
employees or their like customers or clients or whatever the case was. And we were just slammed during that holiday season. But it was cool because we realized, oh, we have another business opportunity here, which is the corporate business, corporate gifts. And we
Mhm.
had these really nice gift boxes. We started with those at the outset. We had these like custom Brownie House logo boxes. The customers, put brownies in, we pack them nicely, and then we ship them. And we could ship anywhere. Like we figured out how to do that. It was cool to see that, like, oh, we have this other business that primarily happens in the month of December that brings in a ton of revenue.
Mhm.
So crazy because, we still were learning how our baking operation worked, and then packing and shipping is a whole other thing. And we were just kind of throwing people into it with our part-time employees, and they were super helpful. A lot of late nights that first holiday season.
Oh, I bet.
We It was kind of went flawlessly. I was working like crazy. I got sick that first year. Lindsey helped a lot. I remember one night we like rented this other space. It was like kind of a back room in the same building, just because we needed extra space. And we had the windows open because I was trying to keep it cold in there because we had all these brownies. And Lindsay and it was like midnight and we had jackets on and we're so tired and I was sick and the windows were open. It was so
We're
cold.
like
We're packing these boxes, getting
shiver,
ready.
like sad Santa's elves.
Yeah, that's the part of the business owner, the entrepreneurship journey that people don't see. They don't see
Yeah.
you in there like on day 5 of being sick with your jacket shivering, the windows open, packing brownies so they get to the customer on time.
It's not sexy.
No,
It's
not. Yeah.
Uh,
got it done. And it was a successful holiday season.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
sweet.
oh man, that is so cool. I enjoy talking to you guys. I feel like we could talk about this stuff all day. I feel like it's cool to hear the journey and like you know that you just packed up. You guys just you decided to follow the passion and move home and put all your own money into it and make the commitment to grind it out and the growth has been phenomenal so far. So I do have one more question that we ask all of our participants of the podcast, the interviewees of the podcast. So how would you describe your best day yet, both personally and professionally? You guys can take, I don't know, Lindsey, do you want to go first?
Well, I think one of my best days yet personally was our wedding day when we weren't gonna read our vows. I feel like we've been to a lot of weddings where the vows aren't read out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had seen at a wedding once where they read their vows during the ceremony, but there was a violin playing over the vows. So it was like private but public. And it
Yeah.
was beautiful to like watch it, but not hear it because it felt like you're watching this intimate moment that was really special, but it was like private for them. And so that's what I had in mind. And then the week of Chris, or like 2 days before the wedding, he's like, I think we should read our vows out loud. And I'm like, I don't know. Okay. And then I was like, I gotta like edit. I gotta like make these. This is gonna be like this is like a showtime. It's like showtime. So I just like worked on my vows, but then like reading them out loud together, like declaring our love for each other in front of people was so powerful. And I know a lot of people are like, I could never do that, but it was like it actually just felt like it was just us two, and then our vows were so similar. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
like it was
Right.
almost like
Oh
my
yeah.
side and his side, and that was just so cool, and it felt like that was just so special, and I'm so glad it was you had the idea to do it out loud and that you wanted to. That was just
Yeah.
like that was like I mean that was like one of the best days ever, like best day ever,
Mhm.
our wedding, and
It's a
then
great day.
That's the perfect answer to
yeah,
the best day yet.
yeah,
I
and I
love
think
that.
professionally probably like. I mean, I remember the first time someone paid me for coaching, and I was also living at my parents' house in Pittsburgh, and I remember like running up to my parents and being like, "Look, someone just like Venmoed me this for coaching," and they're like, "Oh wow, pretty good, yeah, cool." I was like, "This is like insane!" Like that was just so yeah, the possibility of that, like, and I think it just all there's so many bumps along the road, but it's like those moments where it's like, oh, that thing that seemed impossible happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, that thing that was really hard is now just like a reality. And it's just like those are the things that keep me going. And I think
Yeah.
that's yeah. And same with like even I remember like when I was in Wicked and I was playing Glinda, I and coming out of the bubble and being like, oh my God, this is like everything I've worked for is this moment. Like I'm this is like the peak of everything I've
Mm-hmm.
worked in for. So like that was also just I just will never forget that. That was crazy also. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I had two professional moments. Yeah.
No, that's super.
Yeah.
I would say professionally and personally, the best day was the day that I decided to quit my 9 to 5 to pursue something totally different and unplanned. Um, I felt liberated. I felt like a totally different person. Um, and I had no idea what was ahead of me, but that really was the best day in my life, I think, because from that point forward, I've known that I'm not stuck in any position. There's always a way out. And you can make decisions for yourself. You can decide to go do something that you want to do because you're just not enjoying what you're doing in the present moment.
Hmm.
That's such a freeing and liberating uh, thing to just become aware of. And I think it has changed the trajectory of my life, regardless of what happens with Brownie House, which I mean, we're keeping it going, it's surviving and thriving. But moving forward, like I can't forget that point in my life where I made that decision. And I'm sure I'll make that decision again. I think everybody should reinvent themselves at least a couple times throughout life. And I reinvented myself and I'll do it again because I know that like, yeah, that was great, and that's life, man. Like
Yeah.
go out there and live it, that you gotta do what you want to do. And
Oh,
you
I
can
love
do
it.
that. And like that's the message. You can do it. So it was a great day.
That
Oh,
was
I love
powerful.
it.
That was powerful.
That this is this has been
Yeah.
phenomenal. I think this is real. This is like hearing your experiences and the real experiences and the work that it took to get there and the growth and I think that's so exciting, and I think it's very valuable for people. It's valuable for me hearing that, even, that it's okay to follow your dreams.
Hey, can I say one more thing, Caleb?
Oh, of course.
You and Sarah also inspire me. And I don't think I've told you guys that, but you really do. Because you guys are doing a thing similar to what I just said. You know that you like to go outside and lead adventures, and that's very important to you. And you have built that into your lives. And it's like a permanent thing. It's not like, well, if I have time after my job, it's like, no, you made that your job. And I think the story about when you reached out to K2 Adventures because you wanted to learn how to get into that industry, and it like turned into something that was so great for you guys, and you've had so many awesome experiences from that. Like that was powerful for me because I think about that a lot. I'm like, man, they just identified something they wanted to do and they figured out a way to get started. And it's like it has worked out for you guys. And that's a powerful
Oh, I
area.
appreciate that. That
Yeah,
means
for
a lot. Oh
yeah.
yeah, and it is. I mean, and it's also like, that's like Lindsey with you. That's my therapeutic. That's my happy time is out on the trail, my thinking time, and
Yeah.
I love it. So, well, Lindsey and Christian, thank you for being our guest. I enjoyed talking to you about everything that we covered, much more than just brownies. And I hope that we can have you back. And I want to plug your website, and it's yesbrownies.com, correct? Yesbrownies.com. And for more information on Center for Victory and what we've got coming up with Amped, you can check us out at centerforvictory.com and click on the Amp tab for more information on our hiking events. And remember, wherever you're at or whatever you're doing, make this your best day yet.